You're tuned in to Farmers Inside Track, South Africa's most downloaded farmers podcast and winner of the 2024 One EFRA Award for the world's best news podcast. I'm Duncan Masiwa. In this final episode of our Absa Agri-Trends series, we discuss how water security has become a business imperative for farmers as ESG standards drive change in agriculture. Our Price is joined by Absa economists Zama Sangweni and Kinsani Mashimbi, along with sustainability specialist Paige Bowen.
Not only do we have poor supply from a rainfall perspective, but we have infrastructure breakdowns, so supply that you're getting from your municipality is either not there or it's constrained with low pressure, and then the quality of the water that you are getting is obviously also not up to par, sort of where it should be. And now we're watering crops with this, giving water to our livestock, and all of that does then lead into human consumption, which can be quite risky.
The spring edition of Absa's much anticipated Agri-Trends report has just been released. And today we're looking at water in the context of ESG and agriculture in South Africa. And joining me, not only two agricultural economists, but also a sustainability expert. Ladies, thank you for taking the time to do this conversation. And Zama, maybe we kick off with you. Water is such a big issue. It's no secret. If you work in agriculture, you'll know that we're in a water scarce country. So water an increasing hot topic. Before we deep dive, maybe just help us understand how water is viewed in the context of ESG.
Thank you, Ivo. So I think water is a very big sustainability conversation, like you've mentioned, considering South Africa's water scarcity position. But just to go into sustainability and focusing on ESG pillars, I think everybody sometimes misses the fact that water is not just an environmental or a resource. It's also viewed across your social aspects as well as governance. But just to maybe highlight what exactly is the focus in each of the pillars. So environmentally, we consider water in terms of availability and water quality, in terms of the social aspect, which has to do with access and sanitation, does really touch more on the human element and water being viewed as a basic human right. And then in terms of governance, I think the focus there is just to see what are the policies that guide water usage in terms of water being used responsibly. So I think if we understand that water is not just the E aspect, it does sort of paint a broader picture. But just to dive into some of the frameworks that exist in terms of South Africa, and then to another level, maybe what Absa is thinking about it, or how we are participating as water stewards. If you consider how South Africa views water in terms of ESG, we have been actively committed to programs that do promote water conservation and focus on reporting in terms of an ESG perspective. So if you think about the National Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, something that South Africa is involved in, it's an advocate for good quality water use, water availability, and just making sure that responsible water use is something that is a top priority. From a continental perspective, we're also involved in the African Investment Water Program, which is more on a continental level, has the same goals, has the same factors as the national program. And then if we consider it from another global perspective, there's a G20 transformation agenda as well that is focused on water as well. So if you look at these existing frameworks and South Africa's involvement in them, it does demonstrate that we are actively participating in these initiatives in order to try and understand water from an ESG perspective. But I think if you consider Absa and what we've done in terms of water, we are a signatory for the United Nations Principles of Responsible Banking. And I think I also get a sense when I have these water conversations that, the principles of responsible banking are more inclined towards climate, but that's not true. And even if it were that, water is quite related to climate variability. If you look at the rainfall that we spoke about in the vegetable chapter, the climate variability does affect supply. So it goes in quite deep. But our commitment as a country and our commitment as a bank is demonstrated. I think then the question remains, what exactly, what is the detail on it? How far have we come? But we are committed to the water conversation, and we are involved in making sure that from a sustainability perspective, an ESG pillar perspective, we are participants and we are water stewards.
And kudos to Absa for leading the water conversation, because I don't think the agricultural sector, the farming industry talks about water enough. We talk about all sorts of issues, land reform, the politics, and it's very rare to actually have people sit down and have a conversation about water, which is something you look at every day, Paige. What is the current situation with water availability, water quality in South Africa?
So I think if we look at water as a whole, as an everyday consumer, I think we are experiencing water shortages, water outages. I know in my area there's been leaks. So as an individual, as a consumer, I think we're quite aware of the water issues that we're having as a country. But if we take it a step further and look at sort of nationally and how businesses are being affected, we really do see that it is a very, very broad issue, and it's not just affecting households, but it's affecting the agri community, urban industries, businesses, manufacturers, and processors alike. So if we talk a little bit of numbers, we chatted around, there's the sort of supply issue of water. And if we look at it from a natural rainfall perspective, as a country, on average, we get about 500 millimeters of rainfall each year. The global average is actually 850. So we get less rainfall than the rest of the world. And then of that, our rainfall is really variable. So we know across the different provinces, across the different seasons, it's quite unpredictable. And I think it has been highlighted in basically every chapter that you guys have gone through previously. Water has had some level of impact, be it from a drought perspective or from excessive rainfall perspective. If we then sort of look at the infrastructure of the water supply within the country, we do see that, the infrastructure supply within the country is not sort of up to scratch. The Department of Water and Sanitation does release a Blue Drop report. So that report looks at the measure of safe quality water that municipals are able to supply to the people of South Africa. And their 2023 report actually painted quite a bleak picture, unfortunately. So we are looking there at only about 3% of the water supply systems in the country are actually considered Blue Drop certified. About 46% of water supply systems are supplying water that is actually considered not safe for human consumption. It did not meet quality safety standards when the testing was done. So if we look at that, that's about half of the nation's water that is supplied to us that really is not actually, or not necessarily not safe for human consumption, but does pose a risk to human health when being consumed. In terms of the sanitation aspect, the Green Drop report, also published by the Department of Water and Sanitation, looks at around the quality of the wastewater treatment plants, how well they're able to treat those facilities in a critical state where the effluent that they are then treating or releasing back into the system is either not treated or only partially treated. And that links obviously very much into, the poor quality of water that is being supplied into the system. The other aspect of sort of an issue that we are seeing is non-revenue water. So non-revenue water is water that is produced, but it's not billed. This has risen up to about 47% at the moment. National benchmark is 30. So we are quite substantially over what that should be. And it creates this vicious cycle. So you've got non-revenue water, so municipalities are not getting income for water that they are producing. And then because they don't have that income, they're unable to invest in infrastructure upgrades, staff training or skills enhancement, which then sort of further leads to infrastructure breakdowns, and that impacts consumer trust. And it really is this vicious cycle that we are seeing in the industry. So if we take it back to an agri perspective, it really does link. So not only do we have poor supply from a rainfall perspective, but we have infrastructure breakdowns. So supply that you're getting from your municipality is either not there or it's constrained with low pressure. And then the quality of the water that you are getting is obviously also not up to par, sort of where it should be. And now we're watering crops with this, giving water to our livestock, and all of that does then lead into human consumption, which can be quite risky.
The picture she's painting is quite sobering. The numbers quite staggering. Kenzie, can water usage possibly impact supply side effects?
Definitely, Iva. So in South Africa, agriculture is the major consumer of water, standing at 60%. And of that, we irrigate of the total arable land of 14 million hectares, only 10%. This is below the global average. So through a benchmarking quick search, we determined that it stands at about 20% and it's even higher for other notable producers such as China and India. So that number is low, but what's important to note there is that with irrigation, the return per hectare increases. So it's quite important for those high value vegetables and fruits, and we also use it for some of our grains and oilseeds and vegetable production. So what has emerged over the years with the climate variability that the fellow economists and experts have noted is that with the variability in the rainfall and it has impacted soil moistures over the years, which ultimately impacts how production it ultimately impacts production and the yields that we are able to gain from those arable lands that are not irrigated. And also when it comes to regulatory curtailment, the first industry that gets, or when there is a water shortage, let me put it like that, agriculture is the first one to take the knock to say, you know what, we need to prioritize human consumption, but then it becomes also a vicious cycle to say, but agriculture produces food for food security. So those are the kind of dynamics that we find ourselves trying to navigate on our day-to-day production journeys.
This is maybe a bit of a one-on-one question, Zama, but I'm wondering, listening to these ladies, how is water allocated for different producers?
Valid question, Ivo. I think you get your large-scale producers in specific to agriculture and small-scale. So you have your low-impact users, which would be producers that are farming at a smaller scale for domestic use. Small irrigation skills required. They get general authorization in terms of water allocation, and they don't have as intense metrics in terms of reporting as well as water usage. However, they still need to use water responsibly. Your high impact users would be then your commercial producers or processors that have very big businesses that require a lot of water usage, and they are subjected to more stringent reporting analysis in terms of water testing, water usage, when they're going to use the water, so that relates to timing and exactly for what purpose the water is used. So there's more of an intense sort of responsibility in terms of water usage for your high impact users, and that is why they're issued water use licenses. And I think the water use license conversation has been quite sensitive in South Africa. Adding on to the problems that the ladies have alluded to is also this delay in the issuance of water use licenses that adds more pressure to our producers and processors. So I think we're all in the know of all the challenges, including water usage, and how easily you can get access to the resource has become quite intricate over the years. I think water is something that we consider. You open your tap, you get it. But if you look at it from a production perspective and sectorial perspective, it does get quite complicated.
I was at the Agricultural Transformation Lekgotla the other day, where Mr. Ramasori, is the Director General for Agriculture, was doing the keynote address, and he says water licenses, the issues that farmers have been facing are fixed, and it's now issued within 30 days, and most of the farmers didn't quite agree with him. Kenzie, perhaps we can now discuss the importance of water for market access.
So there is a rising ESG conversation that's going on in the broader market, and we see that this is increasing an increasing requirement, not just for cooperation and aligning your businesses, but market access, both locally and internationally. The customers are increasingly wanting to see that you are a good steward of water use. This is not a limitation view, but it's rather an opportunity to seize the market, because the customer, the consumer is increasingly want to see how your production is conducted, and that opens up opportunities. And if our producers are proactive in this, at which we know through drip irrigation and other efficient water usage strategies, we know that positions them better when it comes to market access, not just locally, but also in international markets as well.
So, Kenzie, what you're basically saying is that water usage and demonstrating and reporting on that is not just a legal factor anymore. It's now become a market access driver. So if you're not active in that area and participating in becoming a water steward, taking water conservation quite seriously, you might be excluded to trading in specific markets.
Yeah, you might find it a little bit more challenging to navigate those kind of barriers. Yeah.
Paige, perhaps you could take some time to explain Absa's stance, Absa's proposition on water use in ESG.
So the way that Absa looks at water is sort of through two core themes. So the first one, and how we would support our clients, is how do you reduce your water demand? So this is things like being water efficient, including or incorporating innovative practices into your organization. So to your point, drip irrigation, precision farming, how do you use mulching to improve the soil, the moisture content of the soil, those sorts of things, and we're able to support our clients through that. But it also links into, if we look further down the value chain, ESG is not just about your producer. It's across the entire value chain. It's from farm to fork, quite frankly. So if you look at your processing facilities, how do you incorporate grey water use and water recycling into your business operations? Not only does this reduce the amount of water that you demand from the municipality because you're now reusing your water, but it also then changes the quality of the water that you're discharging into the environment. So it reduces your operational costs as a whole. Both from a demand perspective, you're paying less because you're sort of demanding less water, but the charge of the quality of water and the amount of water that you're just discharging back is also less. So you're mitigating that expense as well. The other core sort of theme that we're looking at is around backup and alternative water systems. So here we're saying, okay, well, if you've got a reduced supply, or there's a supply issue from the municipality, or specifically to an agri case, there's a drought, you're not getting sufficient rainfall or something like that, then what is the backup system that you can be using, or the alternative water supply that you can look towards to be able to add to that municipal supply, or use instead of the municipal supply when it's not available? So from a backup perspective, we're looking at storage solutions. So you've got your storage tanks. In agri, you've obviously got really large areas of land. So use your dams. Either build a new dam, expand the dam. You can use that as a really great storage mechanism for water to rely on in cases of drought or water reduction. And then another really, really big one, as much as rainfall is variable and we don't know if there's going to be a drought, and it's quite unpredictable. The concept of rainwater harvesting is a really, really great solution for clients to be considering. So again, the dam could be used as a storage and actually capture rainwater, but there are various rainwater techniques using gutters and storage tanks on your properties, feedlots, processing plants, even the houses on the actual farmstead. All of that can be utilized, and instead of just letting the rainwater sort of run off, collect it and use it in specific areas of your business where you need it. Some farmers along the coastal regions are also looking at desalination. Can be utilized, treat the seawater and then use it in your production process or for irrigation purposes where it's applicable or able to, depending on the quality. So there really are alternative systems out there that farmers can be, or producers can be looking at.
I must say, I find the ESG and water conversation really difficult to understand as a non-expert, and I've been trying to keep tabs on that, and I see my sense is in Europe it's become a bit of a tick-box exercise. Maybe that is flowing over to South Africa, but beyond the tick boxes, from an ESG perspective, what does success look like, as something that's embedded in the way we do business in South Africa?
ESG is really about doing good business. And I think people don't realize that a lot of the things that they've already implemented for their business are actually also ESG practices. They are things like being energy efficient, being water efficient. It improves your margin, it reduces your cost, it improves your overall efficiency and operational sort of capabilities. Chances are businesses are already looking at that. If they haven't done it already, they're starting to look at how do we invest in this? How do we change this? From a good business sense perspective, but it's also ESG. So ESG is sort of just the tracking and the monitoring of all of these things that you're doing that improves your social sort of standing. Are your workers happy? Do you treat them fairly? Do you have good labor practices? Regulatory governance, the G part of ESG. Are you following the correct regulations, the correct practices? Have you licensed things? Have you got all the necessary policies and procedures in place? And then from an environmental perspective, yes, you're doing good things for the environment, but they're also doing good things for your business. So if you can track that, monitor that, and then be able to report on it, it opens up a world of opportunities for you, because there's the ESG linkage as well. And like I said, ESG is from farm to fork. Many retailers, as we've alluded to, are saying we want our producers and our processes to be ESG compliant. But it really is, it just comes down to having good business sense and doing what's right for the business. And in turn, that will do what's right for ESG as a whole.
Absolutely great advice. Thank you for taking the time to make sense of a difficult topic, increasingly important ESG in the context of water and South African agriculture. That brings us to the end of this conversation, discussing one of many chapters in the latest edition of Absa's Agri Trends Report. It's the spring edition, now available for download. Be on the lookout for many different chapters and conversations as highlighted in this report, now available for download.
That's it for our deep dive into water security in the 2025 Agri Trends Report. Thank you to Absa's Zama Sangweni, Kinsani Mashimbi, and Paige Bowen for their contributions. For extended analysis of Absa's Agri Trends Spring Report, visit Food for Mzansi's website. I'm Duncan Masua, and this has been Farmers Inside Track.